Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
People are so scared to experience those bottom of the barrel moments. Like they're so afraid to be down at like a 0. And in order to get to a 10, you kind of have to experience the 0.
I love that. Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator. I'm Moshe Popack, and today we chat with Dr. Tracy Timberlake. Tracy is a mindset and business coach, a professor of leadership and business, and she specializes in helping entrepreneurs, leaders, and public figures monetize their expertise and become personal brands. In fact, she's often called the entrepreneur whisperer. She's here to tell you how to give yourself permission to be greater than you are. And now, here's my conversation with Tracy. Enjoy. Hi, Dr. Tracy.
Hi, Moshe. Good to be here.
Great to have you, and welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you so much.
So one of the concepts that you talk about is alignment, and I really, really love that concept. Tell us a little bit about that.
Alignment. Yeah, I think that everybody has a blueprint, a destiny that they are supposed to pursue. And a lot of the times we get pulled in a lot of these different directions, right? Like I think life takes us left and right. And so I'm always talking to people about course correcting back to something that feels more aligned. And that really does include, what are your experiences? What's your education? What do you love? What are your passions? All of those are really these like lights, like breadcrumbs, so to speak, that are supposed to lead you down that path of alignment. And a lot of people don't realize that how far they've gotten off of that alignment, how far they've gone left, or how far they've taken their life to a place where they're no longer happy, they're no longer satisfied, they feel really unfulfilled. And I'm like, alignment makes so much sense. Like, can you find that thing that allows for you to feel like yourself again? Oprah talks about this, and she says, come home to yourself. And I think what a wonderful concept to come home to what feels really good in my body, and not just body, but in my mind and how I'm living, and making sure that all of that is cohesive and synchronistic. I just think that it's such an important conversation to have with yourself.
No, I really love that, because I always believe, I call it, I guess, clarity, right? Clarity, alignment, because I find that you have to have that spark, that drive, because when business gets tough, the only thing that'll get you past that is passion. Yeah. Passion comes from that alignment.
You got to be honest about what the passions actually are, because a lot of the times we have, and myself included, I spent decades of my life suppressing those passions, trying to fit in boxes that were never really meant for me. And it wasn't until I said, like, what actually feels good to me, what feels like me, that I started to really feel like I was living.
Whether for yourself or your clients, when you find alignment, because people will say, oh, business is ruthless and it's intense and you got to do whatever it takes. And that means sometimes prices to pay and then compromises. But have you seen, I know that I have, but it's been a lot of work, but being aligned actually results in increasing, in the business box, right? Increasing profit.
Yeah.
So tell me how that actually functionally works. Like when you're aligned, how it actually goes to the bottom line. I want to kind of motivate the listeners to really understand that concept.
Yeah, in entrepreneurship, I think there's a lot of different examples, right? Which is great, because we have social media, we have so many methods and models that we can look at. There is no right method or model other than the right one for you. And I say this to people all the time. You can do drop shipping, you can do coaching, you can start a brick and mortar company. Every model works, right? We've seen it. I think the danger of it is looking to what exists and thinking that is the only way that you can do something, and not being aligned with yourself. Having the fun of entrepreneurship, like really pursuing that, is where the profits come from, because you're not going to enjoy, like, can entrepreneurship be hard? Yes. Like, can you be in a place where you're like, I hate it here, this is not fun anymore? Yes. But to your point, the passion is what kind of gets you over that hump. Right. If you're not passionate about drop shipping, you're not going to keep doing it. Like that's not a sexy business to be in if it's not something that you enjoy. Right. So you have to find the fun in what it is you're doing in order to keep doing it. Because why would you keep going?
I know a lot of young guys, my kids are trying to do some, even though they're 17 and 15, they're trying to get into some business, doing vending machine business and things. And I say the most important thing is exactly to your point. You have to be passionate. Don't just follow. I know a lot of young guys are just following the money. It's like, oh, this guy's doing this, they're seeing on social media, seeing all those things. And it's not that the money, I find, comes when you're, again, aligned.
Yeah.
Also, when you're aligned, you also talk about, then you're able to better make calculated risks. Talk about how that relates, how you're able to do that.
At the end of the day, all you have is yourself. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you have to be in integrity with yourself. And taking those risks really come from knowing yourself, knowing what you're called to do, feeling good about it. I mean, is it going to be scary? Yes. Like entrepreneurship, the very definition, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's going to say risk, like you take risks. But are those risks worth it to you because of your mission, your values, who you are, where it is you want to go, what you feel called to in this season? Making those calculated risks become less intimidating when you know that you're doing it for a reason, and going back to that passion conversation.
Yeah. No, I find that, right, with the clarity, it does definitely give, you're able to, but I always say when you make those calculated risk decisions, because most people, decision-making, I know if you find in your coaching business, being an executor, actually doing action. So here's the plan. Ideas come every single day.
Every day.
Forget about
All
that.
day.
All day. Everyone has ideas, but short and long-term goals, right? And then taking the calculated risk, which is with 70% of information.
Right. And you build up a muscle, right? Like when you do it with little things, you can do it for bigger things. I think a lot of the time people wait until it's like this big, huge decision that is going to make or break their business or make or break their life. And they haven't built up the muscle to say, I trust myself to make this choice. Like I trust myself because I know myself, because I've gotten clear. I trust myself to be able to take this risk because I know where it's leading to. I've done this before and I can do it again and do it with integrity.
Right. And then I think the biggest decision, let's say someone has a job and then making that decision, okay, I'm going to leave this. When do they do that? And, I'm going to actually be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What scenario has to exist in order to do that?
So I say that there's two different kinds of people. There's person A who's like, I know that I'm called to be an entrepreneur. I was sort of just waiting for the right thing to come along. And then it's, I'm caution to the wind, we're leaving because I was never meant to be in this job anyway. Like I know that I can make it. Then there's person B who's like, well, I need to see X amount of dollars in the bank coming through the business. I need to make sure that I have this amount of savings. I need to, like, they sort of have these benchmarks. There's no right or wrong between those two, but I do think it's important for you to know what kind of person you are and then to work towards that. Because a lot of the time, I'm person A, by the way. I was like, once I had the model, I didn't have everything in the bank. I wasn't it was working. And so I was like, okay, well, now I'm leaving. Because I knew that I was going to leave. I knew that I was. Even my boss knew I was. She was like, well, I know that you're going to leave. Yes, I am. I'm going. Right. But then there's the people who need to see, X, Y, Z. If you know that you're a person that needs to have $50,000, work towards it and be really, really diligent about it. Because a lot of the times we're towing the line between being an entrepreneur and being an employee. Nothing is wrong with either, right? Again, it's alignment, it's calling. But if you know that you need to see something in order to truly follow the passion or the purpose of entrepreneurship, then work towards making sure that you have that instead of just kind of playing it really, really safe and not allowing yourself to truly experience what's on the other side of that for you.
Right, because in that safe, the opposite of that is calculated risks.
Correct.
Right? And I think of also, if you're going to move from there, I think that any business you should give, especially in this environment, because it gets getting tough to actually see success, which means profit in the business box. I think of like 2 years of savings for your personal lifestyle. I think cut it down if you're going to make that decision, really cut down your personal expenses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's a sacrifice that some people have to, again, if that is you and you know that you need to see that, then you're going to have to make some sacrifices in some areas so that you can get there faster.
Right. And I know also, what is it, maybe 90% of restaurants or stuff or businesses that start out, maybe they fail.
Yeah.
Because I think that the other side is you don't also budget, not just for your personal, but also that you're going to have to gain it takes 2 years.
Yes.
Maybe at least 2, and you're going to have to really put pen to paper and do the math of that.
Yeah, I find it interesting that, people are so willing to do other things for lengthy periods of time, but entrepreneurship is like a whole nother monster. Like starting your business and then, abandoning the ship of a traditional kind of 9-to-5 situation. It's like, It's the risk that everybody knows that they have to take, but for some reason, it's the scariest.
Yeah. It always seems that way. What do you, in your coaching business, what do you advise? Because you're going through this journey and you have this entrepreneur and everyone's attacking him and he's in a tough spot in his mind. How do you get him from there to more abundant mindset or, to push past? What are some of the practical tips?
So, some of the practical things, well, first and foremost, you have to identify kind of where the triggers are coming from, right? Like if you are around people, you have this dream, you're around people who are constantly bashing you, who are just not really in the same mindset. Like you have to make the conscious choice to say, I can't discuss this with these people. I'm not saying like leave them behind, leave your friends, leave your family, don't talk to them. But you do have to make a conscious decision about what you're discussing and with whom, right? Because, as the saying goes, you are a sum of the 5 people that are closest to you.
Yes.
So you need to find some other people to be close to if you want to get a mindset that is going to support the vision and the mission and the destination of where you want to go. Get into some different communities. We were talking earlier before we started recording about a community that you're a part of and how that's opened doors. And I'm a part of different communities as well. And it's because I need to keep people around me who understand what it looks like to operate at this level. It is not normal, to do this kind of work. This is not normal.
There's nothing normal about it. Right. So you have to, that's that alignment, knowing, okay, you know what? I am not normal. I guess unapologetic, right?
Yes. And
that's the word that I've been thinking about a lot. Right?
Yeah, being unapologetic about that. We at Flourish Media, my business partner and I, we have a mastermind where we host these conversations on purpose because you can feel like you're in a silo, like you are alone, you are crazy, like no one else understands what you're going through. And the concept of living in lack or living in scarcity or feeling like you won't make it or imposter syndrome, all of those things can feel very pervasive if you don't give yourself what you need. Like there are a lot of people that are relying on you to succeed. This is what I've learned about myself. A lot of people are relying on me to succeed. A lot of people are relying on me to do what I say I'm going to do, whether it's clients, partners, whatever. So if I know that, I could martyr myself and be like, oh, everything always rests on me. It's terrible. Or I could say, you know what? A lot does rely on me. So I better give myself what I need. Like I better figure out how to support myself so that I can achieve the things that I know that I'm supposed to be achieving.
And I think I found that for myself, a good recognition when I heard Oprah, you were mentioning Oprah before, and she said 30 years of interviewing men, women, and children, the number one need as a human, the more you're self-aware of yourself, was validation. In entrepreneurship, as you're growing, because it's just you, like you're saying, it's just you, you're not going to get that positive feedback all the time. That's why a coach is good.
Yeah.
A coach is good, aligning you. And knowing that if you do reach these grand goals, it might actually be very lonely.
Oh, yes.
And that is a price.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
For you to be you.
Yeah. And I remember for myself hitting my first 7-figure mark and somebody had asked me, how does it feel? And I said, it feels lonely. Like, I don't know anybody else doing this. I mean, sure, I have colleagues and people on the internet that I talk to and things like that, but I don't know anybody in my real life who's doing this and who's living like this and making this kind of money and also enjoying it, right? Like I was enjoying it, but like, who do you talk to when you're at that when you're at that stage and you're like, there's nobody else who's going to understand what it took for me to get here.
And it's funny, before the show we were talking about, which most people don't know, know about yourself, that you're an introvert and I'm an introvert. And this is just mechanism because in the end of the day is super important in entrepreneurship to connect to the people that may understand just a little bit of yourself. But also I think on the other side is don't get rid of family, don't get rid of friends, but just be careful with the things that you say and be very nice to everybody.
Yes.
Here's some food, let's go for dinner.
Yes.
Let's talk about silly things, this movie or music. Yes. And just be careful because you have to protect your soul.
You do. I think, because we are so interconnected and we're created to be that way, we want people to be able to celebrate with us and we want people to be able to understand where we're coming from and what we're going through. But the reality of living in this space is that not everybody is going to. Just like I will never understand what a cardiothoracic surgeon is going through when his fingers are inside of somebody's chest cavity. right? Other people who do not do this work will never understand this work. And that's okay. You can still have these relationships and they can flourish in many different ways, just maybe not in business.
Just a quick reminder, this is the Common Denominator Podcast. If you're enjoying this episode, we'd be grateful if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review and subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't already done so. Thanks so much. Now, back to the show. I know it sounds out there, but if you really want to go on the journey of entrepreneurship, it's like akin to, you go into battle in a way, right?
Every
like
day.
you're a samurai, right? And you just have to master your emotions.
Right.
You have to master. I mean, if I told you in the past 7 days how many things, like major things were coming, right? As we know, as yourself, and that is, there's no whining and complaining about that, right?
No.
And then I know also you deal with, and it's surprising, but as more successful you get, we touched on it in a different episode, imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that with your clients?
Oh, imposter syndrome. It's really, really interesting how imposter syndrome shows up because it usually isn't in the beginning, to your point. It's usually at the time where you get beyond what you have thought you could accomplish, then it starts to become an issue. Then it's like, well, I don't know if I can keep going, or I don't know if this is for me, or I don't know if I'm capable of doing this. And how we deal with it, at least in coaching, is we figure out what the triggers are of the imposter syndrome, because they can be many depending on the person, but also identifying, that the things that you're saying to yourself about that aren't actually true. Like you're just making up stories in your brain about how you can't or you shouldn't or you won't, or it's, and we have to really address the fact that like here's the truth and here's what's not true. And you can feel what you're feeling, but it's really important to distinguish between having a feeling, right, or telling yourself that this is actually the truth of who I am, because it's usually not. It's an identity question.
I remember we had on the show, there was an actual stat, and it really been thinking about it a lot. 8 billion people in the world, and then 95% of the movement is based on fear.
Yeah.
False evidence appearing real, right, which is defense. And actually, he was saying that less than 1% of those fears actually happen. So I love that, really aware and differentiate, because not really whatever the stories, it's just stories because in your lifetime growing up, no, you can't do this, no.
Right.
So you have then your subconscious, and you have to like balance that out and kind of.
It's kind of an irrational thing, honestly. Like when I talk to some of my clients, I'm like, okay, here is a Rolodex of things that you have accomplished. Here are the 3 things you're now telling yourself that are untrue. It is irrational to think that, considering that there's all of this evidence, to the contrary. But, the mind is a powerful, powerful thing. And you can tell yourself stories, and eventually you start believing what those stories are. So what I say is okay, like if you can tell yourself a lie and begin to believe the lie, then just use that exact same energy to tell yourself the truth and start believing that instead.
Right. I really like that. How important, because I know you had a post about this, about possibility and abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset from a practical perspective. Like what is the difference of that mindset, and maybe even having daily meditation or to get into that?
Oh, yes. We live in a world, to your point, where fear is the driving factor for a lot of people. And most of the time, we don't even recognize it. We're just operating like this because it's a program that we've been living with for decades and decades, and our grandparents lived with it, and our great-grandparents, and people that came before us. So we learned how to operate that way. And we tell ourselves that things are impossible or things don't exist, a lot of the times because we don't see them tangibly in our hand, right? And so with lack and scarcity, it's the same thing. You're telling yourself a lie and then beginning to believe it, because that's not actually true. Look at all of the things that exist in the world that would actually prove the opposite. If you look at, let's just take people in the media. So Taylor Swift right now, I think I did a calculation. I was like, she makes like $13 million every night. And that is a pretty cool thing to be able to do. And I'm sure that she didn't get there by thinking that it was impossible. Like, you have to see it in your mind before you can ever experience it in real life.
I love watching that. There's a certain people, I call it the X Factor people.
Yeah.
They're able to vibrate on a certain place, and all the media scrutiny now, right? She's dating Travis and all that, Right? I mean, I see it because it's everywhere.
It is everywhere. It's everywhere. You can't ignore it.
I know my daughter wants me to be a Swiftie, but I'm not there yet, but maybe one day. But it is fascinating to watch at once in a generation type people, and you could see that frequency, that vibration, maybe take like an Elon Musk or someone where it doesn't really matter.
Right.
They had kind of, it seems like an existential crisis or something that happened, and they're just floating above.
Yes.
And it's really amazing, and I admire it tremendously.
Yeah, it's really a cool thing to study, and I do like to watch these documentaries and study people who've experienced really great heights of fame, because they usually have a handful of things that are in common. To your point, it's that. It's I'm going to rise above this. I'm just going to keep going. Like it's, I'm just going to keep going. It doesn't matter. And everybody experiences the lows. What's interesting about that is people are so scared to experience those bottom of the barrel moments. Like they're so afraid to be down at like a 0. And in order to get to a 10, you kind of have to experience the 0.
I love that. The rock bottoms. I know in my life is exactly what propelled me, to your point, in the things that I do. Sometimes I forget about it, but you got to always go back. You got to have a journal, and you got to go back and remember where you were, because it definitely shapes that.
It shapes it, and it's not fun to be there. I mean, I can think of my own bottom of the barrel moments, and I don't think that those are the only ones that I'll ever have in the entirety of my career. But I think what's really important in recognizing, the height of these people is they knew who they were at the bottom. And if you know who you are at the bottom, then you'll be the same person at the top. Because if you quit at the bottom, then there's nowhere else for you to go. Like you're just going to stay there. But if you know who you are and you know who you're supposed to be and you keep on that path, the bottom doesn't seem so scary because you're always you. It's always aligned.
Right. That foundation, I find that's probably the most important work. To really become self-aware, to really know who you are in your core, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And I always think about no judgment of self and no judgment of others.
Yeah.
That's because you have to allow flow.
You have to.
Right?
Because, you have to. I mean, we don't want to block the flow. Flow is where it's at.
And I like it's also a great tool when you talk about celebrating the small wins. I find I'm very hard on myself. But that's definitely a great tool. Talk about that, why that's important.
Yeah. So are you familiar with Enneagram?
I've heard.
Yeah. So I'm a big Enneagram person. I teach it. I talk about it. And I happen to be the Enneagram of everything. Like everything is predicated on my successes. Like I need to be achieving at all times. So because there's never an end to success, I will forget to celebrate along the way. To celebrate the small things, knowing that it's leading to the big thing. And I think a lot of people find themselves, especially if you're really high achieving, a lot of people find themselves in that space where it's not good until it's the end. It's not good until they reach the pinnacle of what the vision is. And it's like, let's talk about the vibrations of it all. Really, I mean, gratitude is an incredible activator to attract more things in your life. So if you can just continually be grateful about all the little things, and it's a practice, like believe me, for myself, it is something I have had to intentionally include in my daily practices of gratitude, whether that's writing 3 things down or just, closing my eyes and saying it to myself, saying a prayer of gratitude. It becomes who you are. And when you have things to be grateful for, you start to look for more things to be grateful for. And then more things come into your experience because you're just a grateful person.
Yeah. No, it's like high achieving people have to step back. It's exactly like you're saying. It's actually a practice. So, I can have results, 5-6 results, and then just get walloped. Just this past couple of get walloped by a couple of things, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, like this is a little bit out there. But I'm fascinating. I guess you started off as a YouTube influencer, and then transitioned to the coaching. How was that beginning as a I know it's probably as time goes by, more and more people are on YouTube and social media, and it seems to be getting harder to do that. How was that experience for you as a YouTube influencer and then transitioning into coaching?
So in the beginning, my origin stories, so to speak, of starting a YouTube channel really occurred when I was going through some things like family things, My brother had just died from cancer.
Sorry.
I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder because of it. And I felt like it wasn't like a chemical thing. Like I was like, this feels to me like a internal spiritual crisis that I need to address. And I found YouTube as a creative outlet. It was like, I'm just going to make these videos. And, one video became 2 and 2 became 3. And then you have hundreds of videos and people start paying you for things. And you're like, wow, this was in the beginning. This was, over a decade ago. No one was making money on YouTube. It was really just for people to show their babies dancing in diapers and cats and things. And there was this community of girls, young adults, or even teen girls who were just making videos about their life and about things that they enjoyed. My first video was about a hair product. And the transition occurred when I felt like I had 2 jobs, because I was still working my 9-to-5 job at the time. And then I had all of these brand deals that I was starting to do with YouTube. And I was like, I remember I was on a walk and I was like, God, this is not going to work. I can't keep doing both of these things. So something's got to give. And right then is when I found the coaching industry, which I didn't know existed. But I was like, well, this is what I've been doing pretty much my whole life, or at least my entire adult life had been in this counseling, coaching sort of space. And I didn't know that that's what I was doing. And so that was 2015. And I spent the rest of the year just kind of researching. That was like end of summer. Spent the year researching, kind of putting things together, setting intentions, praying about it. And then top of the year, 2016 is when I started my business. And it was a pretty seamless transition from there.
So people would, as you put yourself out and people would reach out, I need help in this. That's really, I love that. And I know now you're going to be starting a masterclass.
Yes.
Or tell us about that, because I love master classes.
So a lot of my clients and the people that I work with are people who are just like me, who have this thing that's inside of them. They know they want to help people. They know that there's a calling to entrepreneurship. They're not sure what that looks like, but they're also very, very accomplished in the careers that they've had. And they haven't figured out how to sort of make the transition into monetizing that beyond just the traditional job. So the masterclass is called Monetizing You Masterclass, where I just walk people through some of the steps that allow for them to begin to monetize these skill sets and passions and things that they know are inside of them, so that they can get the ball rolling and they can begin to at least explore what it would look like to be a coach or a consultant or some sort of entrepreneur.
I love that. So in this moment, I know we talked about gratitude a lot. What's something that really peaks of gratitude that you have right now?
I am really, really thankful for this season. This is December at the time of this recording, but I'm really thankful for this season because I feel like things are this has been it's not a hard year, but it's been a challenging year. I think, we've tried to pivot in our business, figuring out what makes the most sense for us. At Flourish Media, as a coach, I've tried to really hone in on what my people are wanting more of. And it's taken some time. It's taken really, I would say, the last 12, maybe 14 months to navigate that. And in this stage, I think I'm really, really grateful for where we've ended up. We have some really cool things that are coming up. We're franchising the business. I have some cool things coming up for my clients as a coach. And things are starting to come together. And patience was the key. It was like, can we stick with it long enough to see ourselves to the other side? So I'm really grateful for the time that it took, but I'm thankful mostly for being here on the other side of it.
Yeah, no, because I love that, because different people, my main business is a real estate business. It's like, and something's been coming, and I think of like on the coaching, it's like, like you're saying, like kind of like the master class, like use technology and really teach. There's all different types of education.
Yeah.
But you've been on this journey long enough that you're an expert. And I think of maybe that's another way even for myself. I'm just hearing, maybe to teach,
Yes.
real estate, but practical. It's just different ideas. I get inspired by my guests. So,
well, yeah. I'm happy to be a guest. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
And tell us something about yourself that people don't know.
Oh, what is something about myself that people don't know? I don't even know.
I know, it's funny. I
feel like I'm like such an open book. Well, here's something about myself is that, my family is kind of all over the place. Like you had asked me earlier, like if I grew up in Miami, and I've been here for a really long time, but people don't realize that my family's kind of all over the place. I have a brother in China, a sister in the Philippines. So I'm like really the only family member that lives here. I haven't, friends are my family, but people don't realize that, in order for me to see family, I have to go to different continents.
Right.
to do that.
No, but that makes you stronger. That makes you
It
stronger.
does.
My wife and I, we left New York and we came here by ourselves in 2007. So I know what that is. It's you have to just build, but it's all for the best.
It is.
Dr. Tracy, I want to thank you so much for joining us. If people want to learn more about you, sign up for the masterclass or coaching, or follow you on social media, how would they do that?
Oh, yes. The best place is going to be Instagram. I'm Tracy Timberlake everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. But I'm in my Instagram DMs the most. So if you want to connect, that would be the best place.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you.
It's been great. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Tracy. Next week, I'll be speaking with Francisco Tonarelli. Francisco is the CEO and co-founder of Grand Brulot, VSOP Cognac Cafe, handcrafted in the Cognac region of France. The drink is a mixture of cognac and coffee, which is a 200-year-old French tradition. Francisco's been in the spirits industry for over 30 years and has served in the C-suite at Seagram's, Bacardi, and more. He'll talk about the ultra-lucrative business of booze, how it's changed over the years, and how his baby, Grand Brulot, came to fruition. Please subscribe to our YouTube page so you never miss an episode. And if you're currently listening to the show, we'd be grateful for a 5-star rating and review. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again next week.